Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing good today. We are so excited to have each and every one of you over here. It's just truly, truly a surreal time with everything going back to the way it was. We're so excited for you guys to be a part of J School. I feel like it's going to be great. And we have our panelists here who are ready to answer your questions. But before we get into that, just a few rules here. Please make sure you're being respectful to each and every one over here. Go ahead and ask whatever it is you want to ask, unless it doesn't violate their private life, of course, but go ahead and ask whatever it is you want to ask regarding housing, school, work, anything that you may have. Feel free to ask any questions. They're here to help you out. We're going to have all of our panelists introduce themselves, but we're going to, firstly, I wanted to introduce everyone myself. We've got Sonia over here. She's in the same program as me. We've got Haley. She's in the same program as me. We've got Racy, and we've got Ayleen, who I've never actually had the chance to meet. But let's get into it. Firstly, does anybody want to say anything, or are we good to go? Okay, perfect. So I wanted each and every one of you to just give yourselves a short introduction. Just say your name, your year, what program. Well, we know what program you're in. And mostly just, we wanted to have you guys answer this question, which is, what has been your most meaningful J-School experience? And of course, if there's any relevant journalism experience that you'd like to share, you can go ahead with that as well. And feel free to add your pronouns as well. I will be adding this to the chat for our panelists to answer. And yeah, let's get into it.
I can go first. So hi, everyone. My name is Sonia. My pronouns are she and her, and I am going into my third year. Obviously, I'm in journalism, but I'm also minoring in sociology and public relations. And some of my current work that I've done is that I work for university relations at the university. So you may have seen some of my videos on TikTok or Instagram. I also work for Blog TO, and in past years, I've also worked for Streets of Toronto. And to answer the other question, what my most meaningful experience at the J School has been, I tried thinking about this for a bit, and I think it's a lot of things, but I think the biggest thing was meeting people. And it sounds like such a simple answer, but taking advantage of the relationships and the people that I've met. I have to give a shout out to Adrian Ma and my lab instructor, Blake Lambert. It's the people that you meet, the people that encourage you, and when you ask questions. A specific example was in my first year, I got to go out and cover the anti-maskers protest, and I was incredibly nervous. But I had Blake Lambert, who was my lab instructor at the time, who really pushed me. He encouraged me. I wrote the story. I was so excited. I got a 60 on it, but he gave me the best edits. He told me, you're doing a good job, but we have work to do. We have improvements to make. And through that, he supported me, and I did really well in the final piece. But it's the people you meet, it's the people who push you to become better. So really just everyone that I've met it's been the most meaningful experience of being able to meet everyone and making those connections.
I can go next. So my name is Haley. My pronouns are she, her. I'm also going into my third year of J School. I'm pursuing a major in journalism and a double minor in politics and fashion studies. So my journalism experience is mostly related to covering fashion, culture, and art. I've been lucky enough to be attending New York Fashion Week in September again. I've previously gone to New York Fashion Week and Paris Fashion Week earlier this year. I've worked with global companies and also interviewed designers, and my work has been featured on platforms locally and abroad. My most meaningful journalism experience, the first thing that comes to mind is a feature that I wrote during my second year. I wrote about the gentrification that was happening to Vancouver's Chinatown, which is my hometown. And it was a really meaningful piece for me because it was the first time I was able to interview people using Cantonese, which is the language that my family speaks. And that piece has always held a special place in my heart ever since. I think it is a piece that represents the kind of things that I never thought I was able to do, but J School really pushed me to be able to achieve it.
I can go next. Hi, I'm Ayleen. I'm a fourth year journalism student and I'm minoring in criminology. I'm from Lahore, Pakistan, so my internet connection might be a little spotty, but I am a managing editor for Ikra magazine and I'm also a junior editor for her campus. And this semester, I'm starting a new position as a digital intern for Rogers Breakfast Television. So exciting. Also, I have a little TV show with my friends called Are You Serious? And yeah, let me get into lost my AirPod. Let me get into my most meaningful experience at J School. So I'm gonna bounce off on Sonia's thing. So my most meaningful experience has to be with the people that I've met with my friends. I feel like J School can be like a real, like sometimes you can be in a lot of like imposter syndrome. You can kind of feel like you're lacking in a lot of stuff. And that's obviously not the case because you're doing the most. And when you have people who understand where you're coming from and want to see you improve and be better, it's so meaningful. I can't even describe how much it means. And so, like, as I said, my friends and I have started this thing called Are You Serious? So being able to start something so fun with my friends and have them also understand where I'm coming from and be so supportive, it's just so meaningful. It's just so fun.
Oh yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Racy. My pronouns are she, her, and I am I just interned for CBC Dragon's Den over the summer, and as a social media and digital intern. And I also have been working for one of the dragons, Robert Herjavec, who's also on Shark Tank. So I spent the summer traveling with him, which has been really cool, and working for his cybersecurity company. I have done, most of my experience has to do with broadcast and radio. So if you have questions about that, feel free to ask. I've done some campus radio, CGRU, and I was a teaching assistant for the TV broadcast class last semester. Last year. Yes, last year. And my most meaningful experience at J School was the same as Sonia and Ayleen's. Ayleen is one of my best friends, and we created Are You Serious together? And it's just this tacky little satire news show. And being able to just like do something fun with my best friends that's in our interest and like taking advantage of like the newsroom, the studio has been so fun. So that has definitely been the most meaningful, the most fun experience, and it's something we can also put on our resumes. So yeah, it's fun.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. To our new joiners, welcome. We were just in the process of introducing our panelists, Sonia, Ayleen, Racy, and Haley. I did ask them one question, which was what has been your most meaningful experience at J School? But the floor is open to each and every one of you. Please feel free to ask any questions that you may want to ask. You can ask questions about housing and J School experience, work experience, how things are at J School. Feel free to just ask anything that it is that you may want to ask. You can either put it in the chat or just unmute yourself and go ahead.
If no one has a question, I can start us off with one. This is open to anyone, it's very general, but what advice would you give to your first year self?
I can go first. I think my biggest piece of advice is to try everything. And if you know you want to go into broadcast, if you know you want to go into magazine writing, still be open-minded to try other avenues. Don't say no to things. I think that's the biggest regret that I have, because going into first year, I was so focused on broadcast, and I've been able to build that side of my portfolio, but I barely have any writing samples. And I'm going into third year and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I did more sports writing. I wish I went into a bit more business journalism. And I could have had that opportunity back in first year and second year. And it's not late, but it gives you an opportunity to build those skills earlier on, and it helps you just kind of become more well-rounded. So say yes to everything, don't be closed-minded, and even if you know you want to go into a particular area of journalism, still say yes to other things, because at least you'll know then that that's not for you.
I totally want to bounce off that, because going into J school, I thought I would be doing investigative journalism or political journalism, which is partly why I have a double minor. But as I started to go through the program, I kind of realized more and more that I really love fashion writing. And that's kind of how I fell into this beat. I would say the thing that I would tell my first year self, though, is to try and connect with people a little bit more. I think part of what I'm super excited for, especially based on Ayleen, Racy, and Sonia's answers, is like getting more immersed in the community, because I did my first 2 years totally virtual in Vancouver, and I just moved here in the summer. So I'm really excited to actually get to meet everybody and do more stuff on campus. And I wish that despite the COVID situation, I was like messaging more people and like reaching out to people, especially in upper years, and asking for advice.
I would say, adding on to Sonia's point as well, it's okay to say no. I think, you know, we all have a problem coming into journalism of having this very specific idea of what we want to do, and maybe only saying yes to things, but then there's also certain things, but then there's also the component of not being able to say no, because you just want to build and build and build your portfolio and have all these different things on your resume, but that burns you out really quick. So it is okay to say no. I know that we all have imposter syndrome, and it's easy to compare yourself to others, which I did a lot in first year, but now I'm entering my final year, and I've realized that I just want to like say yes to things that I feel good about, and I can say no to things that I don't feel good about. It's just something that you kind of have to learn to do. But in your first year, you should say yes to things. I agree.
Yeah, if I could tell my first year something, I would personally agree with everyone. That's literally, you guys took all the words out of my mouth, but I would tell myself that it's gonna work out. Like I also was I was panicking, like, you know, I need to make a portfolio, I have to do this, I need to do this. And now that I look at my fourth year self and I see what I've done and I've accomplished, like I realize I've done more than enough, and that should be fine, and that's good enough for me.
Again, the floor is open to anyone who would like to ask questions, anyone at all, anyone. But yeah. Oh, okay, so someone sent me a direct message. What is your advice on getting work experience in the industry? Example, tips on applying, how not to panic when just submitting work applications, etc.
That's a really good question. Oh, Ayleen can go ahead.
Are you sure? Do you want to go ahead first? Okay. Yeah, I would just say like the worst thing you can do is not apply. Like you should always put yourself out there, because you never know what the reaction might be, or what, you know, you might come across. I feel like you should apply as often as you can, even though it might be nervous and you might get a rejection, but the worst thing you can do is not apply and not at least try for something.
Yeah, I totally agree. You should you're going to face rejections in this industry, especially like when you're younger and have less experience. But it's just about applying to as many things as you can. And maybe, especially when you're just starting out, just try and gain the experience in whatever ways you can, even if it's, you know, a small paper that no one really reads. It kind of builds your skills. It helps you feel more confident, and then it gives you some pieces to add to your portfolio when you're applying for something that's maybe a little bit better than that. But yeah.
I totally agree. I think something that I've learned is every little piece of experience really counts, and a lot of the stuff that I've been able to do has been linked to just even like a small like story that I wrote for like a small paper or something like that. A lot of it is word of mouth, and I've had a company from like London, UK reach out to me because they read a piece that I thought that nobody would read ever. And I think a lot of it is due to like, you have to put yourself out there. And I think something else that I've really learned that's been helpful is not to take rejection personally, because sometimes it can feel like, oh, they didn't take me because I'm not good enough or my piece wasn't strong enough. But it's not always about that. And, even just putting your name out there is important. So then maybe if they receive another submission from you, they can be like, wow, okay, this person's name is now like stuck in my head.
I agree with what everyone has said. Just to add on, I think just like some simple things that I have done when I've applied to jobs within like the industry is like when I'm applying, looking at who's the hiring manager and sometimes just finding their email and just introducing myself. Sometimes it's a way to personalize things. If I land an interview, I'll always just check their LinkedIn and just kind of do a little bit of research about them. It's always good to go in prepared, knowing who's interviewing you. This is like a little like tip, I suppose, but if you land an interview and you research your hiring manager or recruiter, find some of their interest and like sort of build a relationship when you're doing your interview where you can kind of bond on similar things. So it sounds silly and so like simple, but it's such a simple thing to do. And another random thing that has really helped me and led me to my experiences. The way I got my job at BlogTO was merely based on a connection that I built at the university. And one thing that I really, really would recommend and wish I had done sooner, especially in first year, was asking people for coffee chats. What I did was I went onto LinkedIn, I looked up all the journalism graduates and I plugged out people who I knew what industry they were in and I wanted to go into that. I met someone from ET Canada and she's been a mentor of mine this past couple of months and she's given me advice on my resume, on my interview tips. And she told me when I applied to ET that she'd become a referral. So it's building relationships in organic ways, but just like doing a quick little like 15-minute coffee chat, because the worst thing that would happen is that you don't find a mentor through that, but you just keep reaching out to people, but make sure you do it in an organic way where it's not feeling like it's a transactional relationship. You want to make sure it feels really real.
I'd love to connect off of that because I think something that people don't really talk about as much is how, like, as a journalist, especially if you're starting out or as a freelance journalist, you do kind of have this like business aspect to it as well, where you're kind of marketing yourself as a business. And that's where I think actually having LinkedIn and kind of putting your stuff on there is a really useful tool, not just to connect, but also to get your name out there and for people to see, what you're about. And I've also been able to meet some like pretty cool people off there. And I think it's a good way to showcase your skills and show people your work experience.
And just to quickly add on, if you ever decide to reach out to someone, whether it be email, LinkedIn, Instagram, if you find, yes, we love LinkedIn, Julia. If you ever find people that are part of the alumni, like part of alumni TMU journalism, mention that. Say, I noticed you're an alumni, because a lot more times people who are part of the TMU family are more likely to give you the time of day. That's not always the case, but sometimes when you mention that, they feel more inclined to help out or spend 15 minutes of their time. And make sure you personalize your message when you are reaching out to them, because people are busy, so they want to know why they should give up their time. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I want to add to that as well. If you don't have LinkedIn, get LinkedIn. We've already talked about it a bunch. I hate using LinkedIn. It's like the worst platform to use, but I use it because I know it's so important. I have like a bunch of people from my job at CBC on there and my job with the Shark Tank guy I worked with, Robert, and whatever. And I mean, the job that I got with Robert Herjavec, for people who don't know, he's pretty rich and he's like not someone I thought I'd be working for. I literally got that through a connection as well. I met him on set at CBC and he offered me a job without even looking at any of my past experience. And like, I wasn't qualified at all, but it was just basically being there and being friendly and introducing myself and making sure people know my name, and people knew my name. And that's like a really important thing. And in this industry, it's actually like a smaller circle than you think. So like now I go places and I meet people, and I know people through mutual things. Either they're TMU alumni or they're CBC employees. That CBC is like a weird like thing. They all work on every show. So once you're like in, you kind of like know people everywhere. So it's great. Like be nice to everyone. That's like the most important tip. And send follow-up emails after your interview, like a really nice follow-up email. Be like a lot if you have to. I was so much in my follow-up interview, but I got the job. So
If I could just also add one more thing, is that I think Racy touched on a really important thing, which is networking as well, like being in person and being at places. And I think there is a distinction between being like, or what I'm trying to say is, I think a lot of people assume that journalists are naturally really good at networking, and because like you have to interview people and you have to be personable. But in my experience, that's not the case. And it's definitely also just like another muscle that you have to train. And I think that being in person on campus is a really good way to kind of get your networking game kind of like trained and like good for the industry, because you can talk to other people from like different years and just talk within your program and meet people. And that definitely helps prepare you to network and put yourself out there in person.
Okay, so sorry it's a little bit loud on my end, but I was gonna say if you guys don't have anything else to add for this question, we can move on.
I have a question for the panel. In your J School experience or outside of it, is there a piece you've written or a project you've been a part of that you are most proud of?
Yes. In my second year, I think it was, honestly, time, I can't remember. I wrote a piece for can culture, which if you're starting out, can culture is a great place for TMU students to write articles and get bylines. They're really friendly, and it's like an off-campus thing, but basically run by TMU students. So it's great to get bylines. I wrote a feature about sports, and I am not into sports at all, but it was a feature about how sports unite the diaspora. So like people who are living in Canada that are not from Canada. And so it was a really like fun piece for me to write, because I got to get out of my comfort zone and talk to people about stuff that I don't really know anything about. And the best part about this industry is you can learn something new every day if you want to, you know, like if you put yourself into that position, especially as like a beat reporter or whatever, it's your like opportunity to learn something new about anything. Some guy in my year did a piece about worms once, and it was really interesting, actually. So I did mine about sports, and I don't know anything about sports, and I'm really proud of it. I think it was one of the best pieces I've written. So yeah.
Yeah, so I wrote a piece in I think it was my second year for her campus. And some of my favorite pieces to write are like something that affects me personally. So it was about like Pakistani female journalists and how like they have a really hard time in Pakistan, and they get usually, you know, attacked and, you know, a lot of stuff like that. And they can't really work in Pakistan in the industry because it's just so hard for them. And it was an article that, you know, maybe it wasn't the best written as it was in second year and everything. And it was for her campus, which is a great place to write. And I really recommend it, because you can like write, I think every third, like they do a rotation, so you can get your portfolio up. But it made me really proud, and like to do the research about it, to research female journalists in Pakistan, to try to talk to them and get their opinion on it, because it's something that's going to affect me. And I know it affects other female journalists as well. And it was so like, I didn't think I'd be able to do it, and I did it. And it's one of those things where when it's posted, it's so like, you're just so proud of it. And it's one of my favorite pieces that I've written, and it makes me really happy that it affects me and I'm proud of it, you know? But yeah.
I think my favorite thing that I've ever done in the J School program so far was in my second year writing a feature story. The reason why I basically got to go out, and in my own personal time, I'm a huge coffee enthusiast, so I love coffee shops, and I got to interview a business owner who had opened up a coffee shop during the pandemic. But what was really great was this, I had the opportunity to write a feature story. So it was more of a long depth story about this person, about his story. And it wasn't your simple hard news story that just kind of delivers the facts, but kind of the reason why I got into journalism was getting to know people, telling their stories that you wouldn't really know about on surface level and diving more deep into it. But it was a really great experience because we were still kind of in COVID and we were still doing classes like hybrid, but it was my first time going in, interviewing a person, having my recorder out, and then also just learning my style of how I like to interview. And that's kind of what I hold on to, because those experience and that specific experience was so valuable, where I was like, okay, I'm trying to, because the biggest thing that I feel like I was doing back in first and a little bit of second year too was when you're interviewing, listen to the person that you are interviewing. Don't always think about what your next question is going to be, because that's what I was doing quite often. So that's my favorite piece that I've done, because I'm so proud of it. But just the entire experience of reaching out to sources, finding expert sources, professors, talking to that business owner, it was the first time I actually felt like a real journalist.
Yeah, like I touched on in my introduction, my favorite piece is also my second year feature within the J School. I really like that piece because I got to interview people in the Vancouver Chinatown community using Cantonese for the first time, which is my family's like the language I spoke with my family growing up. But yeah, I also feel like that was a really important experience for me because it was my first time kind of getting to be more immersed in my community. Most of the interviews that I had been doing were also virtual, and I was able to finally be in person and talking to people with a recorder in hand and also hearing stories. I think my favorite part was also definitely talking to expert sources. I got to do like an interview that went on for way too long, but neither of us minded. It was with a city historian, and we just talked for 2 hours about like the history of Chinatown, and it was a really fascinating interview, and I think that's something that I'm really proud of.
Okay, awesome. So we have a few questions lined up that I received in the chat. Starting off with, what made you get into journalism?
Oh, that's a big one. When I was in high school, I was a big drama kid. Don't judge me. But yeah, I was big into that, and so I tried to do all the kind of creative things I could, but I'm not musically inclined or artistically inclined. I can't draw or play any instruments or sing or dance. But there was yearbook, and so I joined the school yearbook, and I got to be editor of it, and it was the most fun experience putting it together. And I thought I was such a great journalist when I handed in my portfolio pieces. I don't think you guys had to do that this year, but us old people, we did. And looking back at it now, like I knew nothing. My pieces were so terrible. So you're going to come into this probably feeling a little bit worried that, you don't know enough to be in J school, and you're going to compare yourself to your peers. But I literally knew nothing, and I'm doing okay. So it's fine. I think I just really enjoyed the idea of learning new things still. And I don't know, it's such a fun experience, and there's so many different things you can do with this degree. You don't have to be just a written journalist or a broadcast journalist or a journalist at all. So that's why I thought that it was a fun undergrad to get into. A lot of people actually that take this undergrad go into law school or medical school after. Like a lot of our peers are doing that. So, I think it's a really fun undergrad to take. So I took it.
I actually accidentally got into journalism. I really wanted to be a doctor, and I also really wanted to go to art school. Two very different things, completely different. And I realized that I felt like I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor, and I don't know, my art kind of didn't really want to go into that too. And I really just wanted to make a difference in the world. So I thought that journalism, and I liked writing, and I thought journalism would be the way. And so I applied, and it's genuinely been one of those things where I've never regretted a day of it. Like since day one, it's been the best thing I've ever done. Not only with the friends that I've made, but with with how I feel like I'm actually changing the world with my writing. And it feels so like I feel very accomplished, and I actually really enjoy what I'm doing, whether it's writing and broadcast, and I feel really comfortable in what I'm doing, even though I thought I wasn't going to do that. But yeah.
In the beginning, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I was actually supposed to go into pro-com, but like 3 weeks before starting the school year, before I was like entering first year, I was like, no, I need to go into journalism, mainly because I was afraid to. But when I was a little kid, I always wanted to be a travel journalist. But what I love is storytelling. I think journalism was a really great way to just kind of focus on being able to tell stories, but in so many different mediums. And just going back off to what Racy said, you don't have to be a journalist by the time you graduate. In fact, you may realize that you don't want to be a journalist, and you may want to go into marketing or work in social media or PR, or even law school. I have a friend that was my mentor when I was back in first year, and she was studying for her LSATs. So there's lots of avenues that you can take. And the amazing thing about this program is that it's so transferable. You learn so many skills that you can apply in different sectors. So that's something to keep in mind. And if you have an interest in science, you can, if you know how to write, you can maybe work on science journalism. So there's always ways to mingle different interests into the realm of journalism. But the thing I loved the most was that you weren't tied down to one thing.
So for me, growing up, I would like cycle through like different careers in elementary school. Like 1 week I'd be like, I'm going to be a forensic scientist, and then the next week I would be like, I'm going to be a painter. So I thought about doing journalism in the 6th grade, and that year I had a really amazing elementary school teacher who actually helped our class write and publish like our school's first like mini newsletter kind of thing. And I felt like super official. I would like interviewed my teacher. She was super nice. And after that, I was kind of like, yeah, you know what, journalism I think might be the way to go. And throughout like since 6th grade to now, like there have been times where I was kind of like, oh, like, is this really the right path for me? And kind of like reconsidering. But I think the biggest thing that helped solidify me wanting to be a journalist was also just like this love for storytelling and the experience that I've gained along the way. Like Racy, like for me, doing the yearbook was a really big and important part of like my high school experience, and something that really made me like sure of pursuing journalism. But that's sort of how I got into it.
Perfect.
Sorry, Apurva, can I just pop in really quick? We have a follow-up question specifically for Ayleen. Why did you decide to go into journalism, knowing the dangers of it, specifically in your country?
Yeah, I like, for me, one of the biggest things is I just don't want to be silenced. And I just think it's so unfair that, like, you know, with female journalists in Pakistan, that there is that danger, but there is a need for it. Like, there are people who like want to go down this path. And I feel like I would love to be maybe like, you know, helping that out. You know, being a female journalist, I would love to come back and be able to report in my home country, even though there is that danger. And I understand there is that danger, but I feel like if I put myself out there and I can show that it's okay and that, you know, I'll be okay, I feel like that might be, you know, that was really the reason why. I feel like if I didn't take that risk, and I really want to be an international correspondent, so I feel like if I didn't take that risk, I'll just always think about it and just never actually inspire people like these Pakistani female journalists who have inspired me. So yeah, that even though that there is that risk, I feel like I would be doing a bigger danger just not actually going down this road.
Thank you so much for answering that. this question is kind of, I believe, for everybody, but what are your tips on dealing with the heavier parts of journalism mentally and being suddenly faced with constant overload of news?
Talk to someone. Sorry. Talk to people. It gets really depressing. I remember something like really big happened while we like in one of my classes once, and everyone was just kind of pretty like devastated. I don't even remember what it was. That's how bad it is. Like it's terrible how there's so many bad things going on. But it was kind of a really weird day in class because everyone was just in this weird silent mood, and there was just like this aura of like just devastation in class. And it's something that we have to deal with a lot as journalists, especially because we're so in tune with everything that's going on in the world. Definitely, first of all, we need to take breaks, even though we're journalists and we want to, you know, be on top of everything that's going on and constantly checking like Twitter and whatever. You need to take a break and sometimes do something that's not journalism related at all, like go read a book or something. Another thing is I relied really heavily on my friends, and like we all kind of relied on each other, and we texted each other in the group chat when things were happening. And it's really important to kind of be able to talk to your friends about that, and also talk to your we have oh gosh, I don't know who it is anymore. We have someone at J School who is literally there for us to talk to, and you know, they can give you accommodations if you need it. And I think that that's really important to do, because sometimes you get really overwhelmed in this industry, and it's okay. It's okay to ask for accommodations. People will understand. Okay.
Yeah, I totally like will bounce off Racy's like answer. Reading the news and constantly like being in the news, seeing on your phone, Twitter, you know, get notifications, it can be just so heavy, and not many people talk about how much it can get because you feel like it is your job. And I think the best part about it is realizing that you got to take a step back and realize that you need to like not put yourself into that all the time and have to take a break. Like you should allow yourself to take breaks, whether it's depending on what you do. For example, for me, like when I feel very overwhelmed about like, you know, journalism, school or news or things mentally, I try to just take a walk or turn my phone off as best as I can and give myself a break. And Racy and our besties actually outside of this. So yeah, like as she said, you know, there's a great group of friends if you have that to talk to, whether it's people that can understand where you're coming from. Just do what makes you feel best, and please put yourself first, because you can always feel very mentally and physically drained because of this. So put yourself first.
I don't have an answer because it's still something that I'm working on. It can be draining, but I think acknowledging when you're feeling a bit overwhelmed is important. That's the first step. And then just taking a minute to step back, because I think that a lot of people are in the same boat as you when they're absorbing so much news content that can be overwhelming. So no, you're not alone, but just knowing when to take a step back, I think, is the most important thing, but it's also the most hardest thing, especially when we mentally feel like this is our job. It's honestly so easy to feel immune to what you're reading, and it sucks sometimes.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to falling into like the spiral of just like over consuming news, because like Ayleen said, like it definitely does feel like, you know, the news moves fast. I'm a journalist. I should be keeping up with everything all the time. And with the internet, you can try to do that. You can access news from like all corners of the globe. And one point for me where it got like a little bit too much was definitely when there were riots in Hong Kong, which is where my family's from. And just like consuming that every day definitely can put you in a pretty bad place. I think definitely relying on having like a support circle, but also not being afraid to like reach out to and explore avenues like therapy can be really helpful. I know that it's something that's definitely benefited me. But also, like Sonia said, know that you're not the only one dealing with this, and don't be afraid to reach out to your peers, even if you're not close with them, just to kind of check in on them and be like, how are you doing today? And how can we kind of face this together? And I hope that with this like new generation of journalists, we can kind of lessen the burden and lessen this idea that we have to be constantly tapped in.
Thank you for answering that. Another question that we actually have is, how do you not compare yourself to your other classmates, when you're growing at your own pace in the industry?
Imposter syndrome is very real in the journalism industry. I think we can all agree on that. And it's hard. Like you have, like, you compare yourself, you think you're not doing enough, you're lacking. Like, I felt that. I have a few friends who've also agreed that they felt that. But the best way, like, to get over that or to realize is that, we're all going at our own pace. Like, if it was easy, everyone could do it, And as well as, as I mentioned before, actually, when I was doing my introduction, like, a really meaningful thing is that I have friends who are in the J school, they're in J school, they are, they know how it feels. And so it's easy to talk to them about, how imposter syndrome is hitting, and having friends who like really love you and actually support you and, love what you do and are there for you when you get like, your new internship or when your piece comes out. It's just so mind-blowing, amazing. Like, it's a feeling I can't really describe, because imposter syndrome is so real. And that when that feeling happens, when your friends tell you they love you, you're inspiring them, that's all that goes away. And so you have to realize that when you're going at your own pace, like, you just need to take a step back from everything, because it can be really hard to, like, compare yourself. It's totally normal. It's normal feeling. So just take a step back and realize that you're going to go at your own pace. You're going to get there one day.
Yeah, it's hard. In my first year, I remember there was this one girl, and we had just started school, and she already had bylines for the I, and like was really close with like the people that worked there already. And I was like, I just got my foot in the door. I don't even know how to write a story properly yet. And there were a lot of people like that had some sort of like way more experience than I did already. Like, they like interned at a real newspaper before they even started school. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, I don't know how I'm ever going to catch up to these people. But I did. Like, at some point, it doesn't really matter how much experience you have under your belt. We kind of all get to the same level of understanding of what journalism really is. And that's where you kind of feel at peace with everything. Like, maybe I don't have as many bylines as the person sitting next to me, but I feel pretty confident in where I'm at and what I've done. And I feel confident that I'll continue to write some cool bylines and whatever. My best friends, one of them is editor at like a bunch of places, and like she's interning with Rogers this fall. One of them interviewed an Olympian for Sportsnet, and like is doing an internship with ET Canada this fall. And then another one has like this $5,000 scholarship, and she's doing an internship with CBC this fall. It could be so easy for me to compare myself to my best friends and feel jealous and be upset, but I just feel so happy that I'm surrounded by people who just like push me to be better, people who I can look to and be like, hey, like, can you proofread this, and know that like they are so good and I just want to be as good as them, and I just want to keep working really hard. And every time we message in the group chat, oh, I got this position, or I did this or I have this accomplishment now, or whatever, everyone's like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. And that feeling is everything, that kind of community. So that really helps me, instead of compare myself to my friends and peers, just feel happy for them, because I know that they feel that same joy for me. And those connections are great. Be nice to your peers, because they might help you get a job in the future. So, yeah.
I couldn't agree more with what everyone has already said. And yeah, with imposter syndrome, it's hard. I think it's inevitable to face. And it's easier to say than actually being able to do this, but don't compare yourself because everyone is going at their own pace. I'm going into third year and I think I have like 3 or 4 bylines. I don't have a website to show off my portfolio. There are so many things that when I look at my other friends, they have all these things. Going into first year, so many people had such a huge resume. They already had so much work experience. They wrote for their high school newspaper. My high school didn't even have one. I felt so behind in so many ways, but I just kind of, again, with my friends that were doing these amazing things, I was motivated, I was inspired, and it made me want to work harder. So I think kind of blocking out this idea that, these people are ahead of me. No one is ahead of you because you are going at your own pace, and people will not compare. When you're looking at employers, they're not going to be comparing, oh, this person did this or did that. They're looking at you and what you have to offer. So go in with yourself.
I definitely agree with what everyone else has said, and I have just 2 little things to add. I think the first thing is, typically when people talk about the industry, sometimes it can seem just like a lot of numbers, like, oh, there are like X number of like fashion journalists in Canada. But even though there is like a seemingly large number, I think everyone's story is really special, and everyone, based on their like unique identity, brings something fresh to the table. And so it never feel like, oh, this is already like such a saturated industry, because your story is really important to tell too. And the second thing, not to get too like philosophical or anything, but at the end of first year, I found this really interesting quote that stuck with me. And it was, I am human, therefore nothing human is alien to me. And in the context of this like topic, to me, it means like, oh, when my peers are achieving amazing things, that's great because they're like pushing new boundaries and they're opening new doors. And that's something that, continuously proves like this industry does have a place for like female journalists. This industry does have a place for Asian journalists. And because they can achieve such amazing things, I can possibly achieve those things too.
And just to quickly back off of what Racy said about being nice to people, 100%. I think it was weird because when I was in first year, a fourth year student told me that the program is very cutthroat. And I can see why people may think that, but I also think when you find you're not going to get along with everyone in the program. That's just reality. That's just life. But when you find your people, they are your people. And with my friendships that I built at the J School, if I see a job posting, I'm going to send it to my friends who I think would be a great fit for it. And I know they would do the same thing for me. And this is so cheesy, but I totally stand by this. It's be friends with people who would say your name in a room full of people, in a room full of opportunities, because there is room for everyone. And so I don't want to say pick your friends wisely, but just know that you will find people who are supportive of you and will support you and encourage you, give you meaningful feedback. It's just be open-minded, and just even if you meet people that you thought were mean, or they weren't really helpful to you, or they try to sabotage you, whatever it may be nice, because you never know what may come from it in the future in terms of relationships, connections. Industry is very small, and you don't realize it until you start meeting people and they're like, oh, do you know this person? And then you realize it's very small.
Okay, great. I was thinking of wrapping it up, but we just had one more follow-up question that I think we can quickly answer, and then we can wrap up. But for bylines, what's the best start to get them is pretty much our last question for the day.
I would say any campus news publication, or any publication that's kind of like with TMU students. So right off the bat, Her Campus is a great one. The Eye Opener is another awesome one. That's where I got my first byline. Can Culture, The Other Wave. I think there's so many more, but just starting off on campus and reaching out to your professors in your first year and asking them about the publications that exist, it's the best way to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, I have to agree with Sonia. Like campus newspapers, campus websites, and everything. New Wave in the comments, Her Campus, Eye Opener, everything. And even if they their applications say that they don't have more writers or anything, ask, because they most likely will have the room, and they would love the opportunity to work with you. Their campus, so they're campus based, and they would love to work with you, and you'd love to get a byline. So definitely try and ask and use their emails. DM them. But yeah, I have to agree.
And the editors at these places are so nice. So if you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing exactly, you know, if you reach out to them and you send them drafts, they have to edit them anyways, but they'll be really helpful, especially if you say like, I'm a first year, this is my first byline, like, could you give me some more support on it? They will. They're really, really nice. And another thing is the pieces you work on in class in first year, you can submit those to campus papers and stuff. So like if it's eligible, if it's something that makes sense, reach out to a paper and say, hey, I wrote this for class. Like, can I like submit it like to the paper? And sometimes they'll say, yeah, or like this works great. We just have some edits, and then, you know, there you go. You have a byline in like the campus newspaper in a physical like newspaper, which is super cool. So yeah.
My answer kind of connects to a lot of stuff we've talked about throughout the panel, but it's just a lot of definitely putting yourself out there. Like Ayleen said, like more places are hiring or in need of writers than you'd expect. And I feel like in an increasingly like digital world, writing and being able to write, especially for like a social media platform or like for a digital platform, that's super, super valuable. And so reach out to as many places as you can or that interest you, even if you feel like you don't have the adequate experience for it, just apply anyways. And I think definitely building connections within the school and within your school community is something that's super helpful in getting bylines.
I also just want to quickly add that you can also build your own website, whether it's on WordPress or, you know, there's different websites that you can actually create like your own brand. I remember someone mentioned that, you know, when in the journalism industry, you are yourself a brand. So you can make your own website, you can put like write stuff, you know, get people to edit it, your friends, if you have any, to like look at work that you do, teachers or whatever, or edit it yourself. And you can post as well on your own blog. This also creates like a big portfolio. And it's something that I wish I did sooner. So I would really recommend doing that because it looks great. You build a whole brand.
I would love to add on to that. That's such a good point. I built my website around like earlier this year in the spring, and that was something that was really helpful as well, because instead of just sending like links or like a bunch of PDFs to publications, you can just have one handy link of your website. And I would love to also plug, I believe it's Adobe My Portfolio. With your school website or your school email address, you can get like free access to that entire platform while you're still in school. It's really helpful, it's really useful, and it's really great for creative people to showcase their work.
One last quick thing that I wanted to add. I know like people like, you know, this is question specific to bylines, but we also live in a world like the internet world, and it's so easy to do so many things because everything is literally in our fingertips. So this is like specific to writers of bylines, but what else? Another great thing is that you can literally create podcasts, TV shows through Instagram, through Anchor. That's a great app for podcasts. You can do just so much. And so being able to do that, like, it's great to obviously put yourself out there for like brands and, you know, magazines and everything, but doing that on your own and creating things really just sets you apart from everyone else. So you should definitely like make your own website, you know, make podcasts, do IGTVs, things like that, and build your brand.
Okay, perfect. I think it's a really good note to wrap up right now, but I will say that if you do want to reach out to any of our panelists, you can just find their Instagram, or they can add it in the chat if they feel comfortable. But you know, thank you so much everyone for coming, and we're so happy that we had the panelists here to even just. We're like, thank you so much, Sonia and Ayleen and Haley and Racy. Like, it was just so great to have you guys here. And to all of our new, like to our Froshies or to all of our new J School students, you guys are going to have a blast. At the end of the day, like, we're all just one big family. We're really excited to have you here, and we can't wait to get to know everyone more. And I think we're going to be posting this recording on our JCU Instagram, but if you do want to send it out to your other classmates or anybody else, do feel free to do that. feel free to do that. And, you know, you can share this information with them as well.